Welcome, everyone, to Homeless in San Diego. My name is Greg Angel. I'm your host of the show. I serve as the CEO here at Interfaith Community Services, and we are recording here at Interfaith Community Services in my office, right next to the street. So we might hear some trash trucks rolling by or other things. If our listeners are listening carefully, they might hear some background noise. And I'm joined today by the first of three guests, Mitchell Snow. Mitchell, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Well, I should say welcome back. So it's part of the story, your experience with Interfaith. You were first on the show. We were talking, it was probably about 4 years ago.
Yeah, it was about 4 years ago. I was on back when I was a case manager. I'm working as the faith liaison for the agency now, so I handle all of our communications with the different faith communities that support us. But back then, I was working as a case manager with our veterans.
And you were joined with a veteran who had gone through our veterans housing program in Oceanside, a program you later managed. And he shared his experience overcoming homelessness after overcoming years of wrongful incarceration.
Yeah, he had been incarcerated with a sentence of, I think, over 300 years and eventually got granted clemency by the governor of Arkansas. And that's how he ended up coming back to Southern California and being under our care. And he actually exited our program successfully back then.
Yeah, his story was really powerful, and that's what this show is all about. This show is about the personal stories of people experiencing and hopefully in most situations being able to overcome homelessness. And today we're talking about all of those stories combined into what happens once a year, and that is the annual point-in-time count. It's a census of individuals who are both sheltered and unsheltered experiencing homelessness.
Yeah, it's a chance to really get a snapshot of what homelessness looks like on one day of the year, really nationwide.
So to our listeners, if you have heard in the media there are this amount of people who are homeless in San Diego, you're probably hearing data from the point-in-time count. The point-in-time count in 2023 found a little over 10,000 people throughout the whole county. And the way that's done is very, very methodically. And Mitchell, this last year, so we're recording this in February, and you helped lead the count just a couple weeks ago. This last year, you were in charge of the Escondido location of this count.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to lead the Escondido site, which had 33 different regions within Escondido that we were making sure were covered by volunteers who were going out to handle interviews with direct contacted surveys with people who were actually on the streets to find out how they ended up there and find out what resources might be beneficial to support them.
So you were given 33 different maps, or?
Yeah, 33 different maps, and we had teams of anywhere from 3 to 5 people who would go out and essentially just try to find people who were on the streets, who they would then do surveys with, and everyone who completed a survey was given a 7-Eleven gift card that they were then able to use afterwards. And that day, we did contacted surveys with 179 different individuals just here in Escondido.
Wow. So, and we had about 80 volunteers that morning.
Yeah, we had 80 volunteers. 30 of them were from Interfaith, so Interfaith staff that went out and participated. But that means 50 from just the community, both from representation from the city of Escondido. We had support from the Escondido Police Department, and then a wide range of volunteers who came in at 3:30 in the morning to then go out and participate in doing these surveys in the community.
And I mentioned you're the first of three guests today. We have two other guests who are going to share their personal experience doing the count and their personal experience working here at Interfaith, helping people overcome homelessness. We do a lot of work around homeless prevention too. Mitchell, you mentioned 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it's bright and early. We certainly...
dark and early.
Yeah, I mean, for some, it's a late event because they'll stay up all night just to make sure they make it on time. But it was amazing that we had 75 to 80 volunteers who were willing to be here that early in the morning to then go out and spend 4 hours of their early morning going out and making sure these surveys got done. And they're very important because it's this information that is really valuable for the federal government with the money that they allocate to each city when it comes to resolving issues around homelessness.
And how many people did you say our volunteers interviewed that morning?
It was 179 actual contacted interviews. So that doesn't even include people that they just observed. It's every single actual survey that was completed was 179.
And what are some of the questions that are asked?
It's a wide variety of questions. I think one that's especially relevant is where people became homeless. It's one of the statistics that we're asked about a lot, the number of people who are living on the streets in our city who are from our city versus those who came from outside. If I remember right, last year had about 80% of respondents in Escondido that said they were actually from here. And I think that kind of runs against the assumption that people have that most people are coming from outside of Escondido. So it's really valuable to get that much information from the people that we are surveying and to get it from as many of the individuals who are on the streets as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I was sent an email just an hour ago from one of our council members here in Escondido, and they had received a complaint from a community member who was concerned about homelessness here in the community. And this person, the reason it was shared with me is that the person directly connected existence of someone who's homeless with proximity to Interfaith Community Services. And it's that assumption that you just described. Well, people must be coming here, and why would they be coming here? Because of the services that we offer. And it shows the critical importance of actual facts and information that we're getting directly from the people who are homeless themselves, who are stating, as you said, 80, 90% are actually, from here, from this community.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have the count in order to have a response to those misconceptions that can so often come up. And I think it's normal to have those thoughts that come up when you're seeing people on the streets and you have concern about that, and that's fair. But these surveys really do a lot to show the true reality that people experience living on the streets, and that more often than not, the neighbors that we see on the streets are the neighbors that we have next door.
You've been involved in the count in a lot of different ways over your many years here at Interfaith, and I get to say many years because I hear you all the time as you give tours around the building sharing that you started here as a 9-year-old volunteer, so literally many years. But share a little bit about your experience with the count and what kind of impact it has in terms of understanding what people are experiencing out there.
Yeah, so I started with the count. It was probably 8 or 9 years ago, back when I was an intern with the agency. So before I was even fully on staff, I had my internship here was with our partnership with the Regional Task Force on the Homeless. So I was part of the count back then and had the opportunity to actually go out and do surveys with people in person. And that was a unique experience because it gave me a chance to see firsthand some of the things that, especially with the Regional Task Force on the Homeless, you're seeing numbers. And so the count is a chance to go out and experience the personal side of what it means to live on the streets. And I think that's one of the most valuable elements of the point in time count, is that it really gives you a chance to have a personal connection to someone beyond just them being a statistic. And I think that's important for people to know when they hear the numbers that come out, is that so many people got a chance to have real, legitimate conversations that day with our volunteers who are here. And it's a chance for those volunteers to see that people aren't just numbers, that people have their journey that led to them being on the street, and everyone's going to have their own unique journey to escape homelessness as well.
So you've been working here at Interfaith for a number of years in a number of different roles. You were in our veterans housing program. You helped lead that program. You're now working with all of our different faith communities who started Interfaith, who sustain Interfaith. What is something or some things that you've learned in your time here that you think somebody who's listening to a podcast about homelessness might be surprised to learn or would find interesting?
I think one of the big things is that when it comes to issues around homelessness, we want there to be a perfect solution. We really want there to be one answer. And when I talk to people from faith communities or just out and about in the community, one of the most common questions I get is, what's the solution to homelessness? And having experienced my time as a case manager working with clients directly, and then in the role that I have now, working with the faith communities that support us, the reality is that there's not one answer. There's a reason why, as an agency, we have over 75 different programs to support the community, and that's because everyone's journey is going to be unique. And so there's tremendous value in the relationships that we build with the clients that we serve and with the community that we serve to make sure that we're taking the necessary steps to solve this as a community and not just think of that one perfect box that we want to place people into when they are living on the streets.
Everyone's journey is different, right? And everyone understands that when we hear it, right? But I think you're right. It's homelessness is often grouped into something, and people certainly want that silver bullet solution.
Yeah, and it's one of the hard things about working with people in need in general is we want there to be a perfect cookie cutter solution that we can then place on everyone. And the reality is it's so much about the relationships that are built up, and that takes time. I think people come in wanting services and wanting that Band-Aid to put over their wounds that's going to heal them immediately. And the reality is that the bigger the need, usually the more time it takes to have that need be met. And I make sure that faith communities know that when they're referring people over to us. Mm-hmm. But it's also important just to let every one of our clients know that it's something that can take time. And just because you may not have accessed the service or the support that you wanted when you came through the door, it doesn't mean it's going to be no forever. But to continue those efforts to get those services that people need.
This is I should say, during the first episode of this season, we had Lisa Halverstadt, who's been doing reporting on homelessness for a number of years. And she really hit it on the head when she talked about what we were just talking about. Everyone's story is different. Everyone's journey is their own. But there's a commonality, and that is that most people don't have a stopgap. Mm-hmm. And so whenever their crisis or crises happen, they just don't have another place to keep them from falling into homelessness. Or if they did, that's no longer available to them. That's a bridge that's no longer there. And for me, I think about the reality that homelessness is not a problem with the personal individual exclusively. And that it is the result of systemic inequalities and systemic problems that we see in our world. And you see that when you look at the results of the point-in-time count, mm-hmm. where we will see minorities overrepresented among our homeless populations, reflecting the systemic racism and racism of all types that we see in our communities.
Yeah, some of the most valuable information that we can get from the count is recognizing the demographics of people who are living on the streets, and that often it's not a great representation of what the general demographics are of a community.
For sure.
It's very much impacting minorities, and it's very much impacting really our neighbors who have the biggest needs and often are least represented.
Yeah. Well, Mitchell, thank you for helping lead the count this year. Thank you for what you do here at Interfaith, and of course for coming on the show today. We always ask our guests for a call to action. So for our listeners, what would you recommend they consider and they do to help be a part of solutions and helping people overcome homelessness?
I think being a voice that counters the stigma that can come with people on the streets. So when you hear those the misconceptions about what the numbers are for people who are coming from outside communities into our own who are living on the streets, to make sure that there's someone in the community who can say, you know what, that's not true. We learned from the most recent count that those numbers aren't accurate. And sometimes being that voice and being that advocate can be the most valuable thing to remind people that while there are myths out there around the issues of homelessness, those myths don't equal reality.
Yeah, good point. We'll link to the most recently released point-in-time count from San Diego County, which as of this recording is the 2023 count. The count that you just helped lead at the end of January 2024 will be released probably April or May. So we'll link to the most recent count and encourage our listeners to get those facts, get that data, and like you said, share them and be a part of destigmatizing a topic that is more and more, frankly, stigmatized. And even as it's talked about and thought about more often, it's also more often misunderstood.
Yeah.
Mitchell, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, everyone. We're back with Wendy Medina, colleague of mine here at Interfaith Community Services. Wendy, welcome on the show.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
So, Wendy, you participated in the point-in-time count this year. It was your first time?
Yes.
What was your experience like?
It was very, very interesting. I've grown up here my entire life, and the part that I got to survey people at was the Grape Park, Grand, and Stater Brothers. So to like experience that at 3:30 in the morning and like actually talking to the houseless community and just seeing a different perspective of my town that I'd never been like witness to was very eye-opening.
Isn't it such a trip that we live in this town, we could be from this town and be in a place that we've been in, hundreds, maybe thousands of times in our life, but just the time of day provides a totally different perspective.
Yeah, like when I was going through Grand, it was very like I've always been there cruising Grand or like out with friends and stuff like that, and then just seeing it at the hour like it's empty, and then I like just people are sleeping on like the sidewalk where I always like walk through. It was heartbreaking, but also like the survey was just necessary because like their voices and their like to count them just matters.
It does. And I think for everyone who sees individuals who we think are unsheltered, that may be what we think about or what a lot of people think about when they think about homelessness. But as you describe what it's like to be on Grand Avenue at 4 a.m, because that's where somebody's bed is, that's where they're sleeping, it's just a very different visceral reality. Mm-hmm. So Wendy, did you know about the point in time count before you joined Interfaith?
I didn't. It was the first time I heard about it.
And why did you decide to come to Interfaith and work with people experiencing homelessness?
So like I said, I've been here for a long time, and I went to college. I went to Chapman University for all 4 years. So to see, like when I left, it looked one way, and then when I came back, I saw like even visiting, I'd see just an increase in homelessness here. And it's like my city, like I love this city, and I'm just wondering like why is there like displacement going on? Why is the population increasing for homelessness? And I think like when I applied to here, I wanted to like make a difference, and I wanted to see how the system works and how I can help alleviate in my own way homelessness.
Can you share about your job and what you do here at Interfaith?
Yeah, so I'm the front desk receptionist for 550. I'm the first person that people talk to when they come. Yeah. So I very much try to make it inviting because a lot of the people that come in are in crisis. So I think the most important thing I can do is just like show them that Interfaith is here with open arms. And yeah, that's kind of how I describe it.
Wendy, you mentioned going away to college, and over the 4 years that you were away, when you would come home, you began to see an increase of people who were on the streets. As you said, now here at Interfaith, you're the first person who people speak to when they come here, and they're working to improve their situation. They're often in crisis. What are some of the causes that you're learning about now that you're doing this work of homelessness, and some of the challenges that people are facing when they come here to Interfaith?
I think previously, before coming to Interfaith, I didn't really grasp the true like causes for homelessness. Like I think a lot of the times people tend to think it's just because they fall into substance abuse, or just like it's one sole reason. But I think we fail to understand that homelessness is a very complex issue, and the multitude of people that I've seen come in with like different types of crisis. It can be like they're facing an eviction. It can be the landlord sold their house, or it can just be a multitude of different things that I never really was exposed to or grasped until I got here.
So Wendy, you work with our clients every day. They're coming to you, first person to meet with them. Going back to the point in time count, you went out in that on that early morning or that late night, depending on how you want to look at it, and you talked to them. What are some of the things that you spoke about in those conversations, and were you able to refer anyone to our resources? Can you share about that?
So similarly to like my work at the front desk, I felt like I was just kind of taking my job to them.
Wendy on the road.
Like I feel like I'm just kind of like a telephone book of resources. So when I went out there, I'd explain to them like, oh, we have showers, we have breakfast. If you need case management services or just like help seeking shelter and all that, I'd give them the lowdown. I'd give them my little spiel. And then also like along with some donations I would give them, like a lot of people some of the things we'd give homeless people were packaged up socks, and with the socks came like a little flyer that just showed like a general overview of the services we had. And that's kind of how I helped refer them to different resources.
Are there any other eye-opening parts of doing the count and meeting with people? You talked about the other reality of places you otherwise know at 4 a.m, 5 a.m, and how different they are and people experiencing them. What else did you experience that you think our listeners might be surprised by?
I think for me, it just really reinforced the notion that I think housing really does come first, and these people, they need a roof. I mean, I don't understand, like, to see someone out on the street and meet them where they're at. And for me, it just reinforced, like, I want to provide these people housing, and I think we should vote for policies that also bring more housing and shelters to these people.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Wendy. We always have calls to action on this show. You just shared one, voting and speaking up for policies that provide access to housing and shelter. Is there another call to action or other requests you would make if somebody said, okay, I'm interested, I want to help, what should I do?
I think the first step is always informing yourself and educating yourself around the topic. I know for me, like, I like to go to city council meetings. I know there's one today, and on the agenda is the proposal to bring a shelter to here at Escondido. So I kind of want to keep myself informed and see where that's headed and see if I can even make any public comments and stuff like that.
Well, thank you for doing that, and an amazing recommendation to our listeners, because so much of our local life is impacted by our local government, but yet it's often not what is focused on in traditional media or even social media. But it's someplace that we can all make a difference, and we should really be informed. So thank you for not just speaking to that, but doing that with actions and with actions.
Yeah, it's my city, and I love it, and I want to do everything I can. So.
Well, Wendy, thank you for being a part of our team here at Interfaith. Thank you for helping people. Thanks for taking your show on the road at 5 a.m. for the point in time count this last year, and really appreciate you and who you are.
Yeah, I'm excited for the one next year, so I'll be there. All
right, we'll see. We'll hopefully our listeners can join Wendy and our team then, and get involved, and maybe they'll see you at City Council too.
Awesome.
All right, thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, we're back with Juliana Ramos, who is our third and final guest of this episode. Juliana, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Juliana, you have been with Interfaith on our team for a little over 5 years, right?
Yes.
And you've done the point in time count every single year it has happened since you've been here.
Yes.
Why do you sign up every year?
I think it gives us an opportunity to see where our clients are at. Usually they come to us, so we don't get to see where they're sleeping, where they're staying. And it's very important too, because I had no idea what it was before and what it meant. It provides assistance with our funding. It gives us an idea of how many individuals are experiencing homelessness, because we just get to see when you're driving around. You only see some individuals out, but there's other places. They're hidden that we don't know about. So we just get an idea. We're like, oh, it's just a couple, or it's a few, or it's growing, but you really don't have a reality of how big it is.
What was your experience doing the count this year, and did you see any differences this year from previous years?
Yes. So a couple years ago, I did the same location that I did this year.
Really?
Yes. And I didn't really talk to anyone.
And what was your location this year?
I did Valley Parkway, most of like Ash Street all the way to Rose Street.
Okay, so like East Valley Parkway, eastern part of Escondido for
yes.
those who are listening. And
yeah, so what I noticed this year is that I spoke to many people. Last year, or the previous year when I did it there, I probably only talked to like one or two. So I saw a big increase. It was like way big increase.
Our team's Mitchell, who coordinated the count, was our first guest on this episode. He shared that you and our other teams completed 179 interviews, or interviewed 179 people. That is a huge amount.
That is.
Yeah. So you saw an increase. Is there anything that you experienced doing the count this year or in previous years that you think people might find surprising, or that helps them better understand the situations that people are experiencing out there?
So what I noticed a lot and the conversations I was having was that most of the individuals are not sleeping. They are staying awake most of the night just for their safety, especially females. I had spoken with one female specifically that was just reading the whole night. And she said she just sleeps during the day because that's when she feels safer. And she stays in a public place. So that's one thing that I noticed a lot. You would assume that you would think like that's the time that we go to sleep, then when we're housed, we have a bed to stay, we have somewhere safe. But someone that's sleeping out on the streets that doesn't have that security, I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense that they're not sleeping.
And for our listeners who aren't aware, the point in time count happens, it starts at 4 a.m. Our volunteers, including yourself, get here at 3:30 and we organize, and then we go out between 4 and 8 a.m. because that's when people are where they're going to be staying for the night. But to your point, so many people are not sleeping.
Yeah.
And as we think about the challenges of overcoming homelessness, I would encourage our listeners to think about the lady who you just shared about, who's staying up during the night for her own safety, is sleeping during the day. How much more difficult it is for her to change that situation when that's her. She's doing some really basic things to protect her safety.
Yeah.
That are going to make it harder to do other things to overcome homelessness.
Exactly.
Juliana, it's a nice, or I think it's an appropriate segue into what you do here at Interfaith. Can you share with our listeners what you do now and what your experience has been?
Yeah, so I am currently the vehicle mobile case manager. I work with individuals and families for homelessness prevention. But I previously was working specifically with individuals who are experiencing homelessness to obtain housing. What I have learned and the experience I had, housing is difficult right now with the double deposit, the 3 times income to even qualify, or the better credit. A lot of our clients have a difficult time with that. It's hard to be able to make your monthly payments and have great credit, and then to make 3 times the amount of rent and income. And a lot of them have minimum wage jobs. Some of them have college degrees and are still not making sufficient to afford housing. And then most of them have been families. And that you can't just rent a 1-bedroom apartment with a family of 5. You have to get a 2-bedroom, and that's more expensive. Yeah. And then you have to also have the money to be able to move in. But if you're staying out the streets or paying hotels to try to be safe, you're spending your money. So it's hard.
It's why we work so hard to prevent homelessness, because it's one thing to stay in the home that you're in, but to your point, it's going to cost so much more if they lose that home to get into a new place. Yes. With the, like you said, double deposit, the move-in expenses. And in this rental market, when an apartment comes up for rent, 50 households apply.
Yes.
So individuals with low incomes are just simply not even given the opportunity to move in.
Yeah, and then the low-income apartment wait lists are years long.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. So through your work, when you were case managing and helping individuals, families overcome homelessness, and now the mobile outreach that you're doing, we have a new kind of Interfaith on Wheels that goes out to different communities. What are some of the ways that you help people either overcome homelessness or prevent them from experiencing it in the first place?
Yeah, so one thing that I do since we have the Sprinter van, I'm able to go out to the community, more specifically rural areas, because a lot of them have more barriers of coming to us. So that's our main focus, trying us be able to provide that services to them. So what I do is a lot of landlord advocacy. So I do try to talk with our landlords, see if we could set up a payment plan. I also work with the client on doing a budget to try to figure out what expenses can we cut, what really is more important and what isn't. And then same, increasing income. Some individuals are just working minimum paid jobs, and we could try to find them something better. So with the resume assistance, job leads, so anything, just to increase.
Juliana, in the point in time count, you went out to where people are staying in the community. In your role at Interfaith, leading our mobile outreach services, our mobile Interfaith on Wheels, you go out to meet people where they are at. Mm-hmm. That phrase, meeting people where they are at, What does that mean to you?
It means to me that we're eliminating barriers. A lot of our clients don't have transportation to get to us. They don't have the income to be able to purchase a bus pass or pay for gas to get to us and receive those services. It means that I'm able to take what we can help and provide, and I'm taking it to them. I'm meeting them at their comfort zone. I'm meeting them where they can come and be with me and get that service. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it means to me.
Yeah. Well, Juliana, I want to thank you for doing what you do, for signing up and showing up at the Point in Time Count every single year, and for being a leader here at Interfaith on our teams. You know, on this show, we always ask our guests for a call to action. You know, our listeners are listening to a podcast about homelessness. They care. They want to help. So, what would you recommend our listeners do or consider doing if they want to help?
Yeah, I would say come volunteer during our intake.
Oh yeah.
During our basic needs intake, we do need a lot of volunteers. We have a lot of people coming in daily for services, and we're limited. And we just see that number increasing. So we need volunteers.
Yeah.
Want to help? Come volunteer.
Great suggestion. We will link to the volunteer page on the website. Juliana, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for wrapping up. You're the last of 3 guests we've had today about the Point in Time Count. Anything else that you want to say about the Point in Time Count as we close out our show today?
Yeah, I recommend it for everyone to do. It's a great opportunity to see what our homeless population is experiencing. A lot of us think that we know what they're going through, but we really don't. So I say do the Point in Count.
Yeah. And if you volunteer for the Point in Time Count to our listeners, you'll have an opportunity to interview people, to meet people, to learn about their story, to learn about the uniqueness of their story and their journey. And there's, to your point, you don't have to wait until the count happens. You can come and volunteer and be a part of what we do any day of the week. So, Juliana, thank you for joining the show. Thank you for being a part of what we do here at Interfaith.
All right, thank you.
To our listeners, thanks for joining today. Thank you to Logan Governman and to Daniel Gauthier for helping bring our show together today. And to our listeners, we will talk to you again soon. Take care.